What this is hipsters. It's film bro hipsters. It's NFL film snob hipsterdom where it's you're just trying too hard. It's like, actually Nirvana sucks. They were just imitation knockoff of the Pixies. But the Pixies were overrated too. They were just bad Husker Du. And it's like what? No. It's not that hard. Geno Smith is not a top 10 quarterback. Jalen Hurts absolutely is. You don't have to. And you're just trying to flex your expert ball knowledge, and you come off dumber than you otherwise should be. What?
Why are you shaking your head?
You're welcome.
Finding running back values inside of the dead zone and an overall running back dead zone discussion. Theo Greminger with Scott Barrett for School of Scott Fantasy Football Podcast over on FantasyPoints Podcast Network. Today we're joined by D-Bro, Derek Brown of Fantasy Pros. This is going to be an awesome show. We had a very organized show sheet. We were ready to get right into the running back discussion, but Scott, you got a little rant. You want to go on. You want to cook a little bit, so let's do it.
Yeah, I realize that I have my own podcast now, so I can go on rants such as this. And what is driving me absolutely crazy are these quarterback rankings that get put out on Twitter. You see, and a lot of buzz by all these ball knowers. The most recent of late was Yahoo Sports. At 4Verts is the person who put this out. Here's his top 10 quarterbacks. Patrick Mahomes 1, Lamar Jackson 2, Josh Allen 3, Joe Burrow 4. All right, that's Justin Herbert 5, number 6, Matthew Stafford. All right, that's a little sus. 7, Dak Prescott, 8, Geno Smith.
Oh my God.
9, Jordan Love, 10, CJ Stroud. And this, I've seen this like 5 different times. It's not just this guy. It's also Steven Ruiz, Ben Solak, a lot of the friends of Mina Keems, like 3 other people. And it's all the same. And it's all Geno Smith, top 10. Why? Geno Smith is not top 10. Like there is nothing to support that. He's the 22nd highest paid quarterback in the NFL, making the same as Sam Darnold. Seattle did not want Geno. They wanted Sam Darnold at the same price. This is not a top 10 quarterback. CJ Stroud, terrible last year, absolutely awful. Anytime there was a stunt, he was immediately sacked. I think he's thrown over 280 yards in a road game just once. You leave off Jalen Hurts, reigning Super Bowl MVP. You leave off Jaden Daniels, one of the best rookie seasons ever. Me and Theo think he's going to win MVP this year. I feel really good about that. I think dude is awesome. You watch tape, like how is he not top 10 already? And yeah, this drives me crazy. And so I don't know what we're doing here, but I'm sort of, stealing this bit from Joe Dolan. What this is hipsters. It's film bro hipsters. It's NFL film snob hipsterdom where it's you're just trying too hard. It's like, actually Nirvana sucks. They were just imitation knockoff of the Pixies, but the Pixies were overrated too. They were just bad Husker Du. And it's like what? No. It's not that hard. Geno Smith is not a top 10 quarterback. Jalen Hurts absolutely is. You don't have to. And you're just trying to flex your expert ball knowledge, and you come off dumber than you otherwise should be. I did talk to Brett about this, and he gives him a little bit more leniency. He thinks what it is like Patrick Mahomes just broke brains in the things that like Patrick Mahomes does that is special. So people just like rate that higher. Like you'll have a Matthew Stafford as a top 6 quarterback just because like he can, he has some awesome, really sick throws that like only he can make. But when you're doing that, you're overlooking the things that matter more, which is just doing the little things right and doing that consistently over and over again. But anyway, this just drives me crazy because I feel like I'm being gaslit. Like Geno Smith is not a top 10 quarterback. I'm sorry.
What's funny about this is a lot of these old quarterback ranking lists by kind of non-ball knowers would overrate winning. but they're leaving Jalen Hurts off after making 2 Super Bowls and winning it last year. That makes no sense. And then Jaden Daniels, how he was able to elevate Washington with like a pretty crappy supporting cast and a bad offensive line last year, take him the NFC title game. Like, it doesn't make sense. Just stick with fantasy points and some other rankers that you trust, because there's a lot of bad information out there, especially in the Twitter streets these days. D-Bro, how mad does that get you when you see Jalen Hurts left off of like not only like top 5, but like top 10? The guy just wins.
It's ridiculous. I mean, I've been fighting Jalen Hurts slander since he got drafted by the freaking Eagles. I fought it with him as a prospect. I stacked up numbers with him as a prospect. I talked about him for years and years, and people are like, yeah, but he's going to get replaced. Oh, but he's not the starter. He signs the mega contract. Oh, yeah, but he's overrated. He wins Super Bowl MVP, and he still gets disrespected. I don't know what he's got to do at this point of his career to get some freaking respect, but I'm here for it. And yes, I get gaslit by these damn lists every time, because whether it's any of the people that Scott mentioned, or Chris Sims putting out his bullshit list of whatever he's talking about this week, of rookies or whatever the hell else, he gets one player right inside of his top 5, and everybody's like, oh, got to put respect on those lists. Bro, have you looked at those lists for the last few years? It's clickbait, gaslighting bullshit. Like, no, I don't really care. Miss me with all of that. People will tag me in some of those things, and I'm just like... Just let him do his own thing. I guess he's got to get the clicks and stuff like that. Then so be it. But no way in hell am I following any of those lists.
Forverts and Chris Sims will not be guests of the School of Scott podcast this summer, but D-Bro is today, so we're stoked about that. D-Bro, we can make a bull case for multiple. I can present like a bull case for multiple top 10 quarterbacks, even in the back end. You want to fade him, you want to fade him. You want to go for him, you want to go for him. Who's the quarterback inside of the top 10 that is really giving you pause and you are fading every single draft?
It's Patrick Mahomes. I mean, we just talked about apparently, the number 1 quarterback in the NFL per every quarterback list out there. I don't get it, man. Like, we're drafting him at the ADP you're referencing again, Theo. Shout out to Mojo. Awesome stuff. QB6. What in the hell has he done over the last 2 years to justify that? He's been QB 10, QB 12. He's had 7.0 or lower yards per attempt. We know that the passing volume's it can't go up. Literally, they're top 3 in neutral passing rate and all that kind of stuff. So maybe, like, if he bounces back, maybe it burns me. But I have a hard time seeing that, guys. Like, and everybody's like, oh, well, the surrounding skill set players just haven't been very good. It's not a Mahomes thing. It's everybody else. It's like, no, if you take fantasy points data and you just look at the categories that Mahomes has control over. This isn't talking about his wide receivers getting separation or guys being in the right spot. This is talking about how well is he accurately throwing the freaking football. Patrick Mahomes is grossly overrated, man. Like, again, low-end QB1, so fantasy purposes, what are we doing here? You're drafting him above what he's been over the last 2 years. And this offense, we can all talk about, all the too high safeties and stuff like that. Patrick Mahomes has honestly been... I don't want to say broken because they've still won, but he hasn't been a good quarterback. Last year, amongst 40 qualifying quarterbacks, Mahomes, 29th in highly accurate throw rate. That doesn't matter about what the hell his receivers are doing or they're not doing. 19th in CPOE. If you look at Mahomes as a deep passer over the last 2 years, so not just a 1-year sample, he has been objectively one of the worst deep ball passers in the entire freaking NFL. Over the last 2 years, bottom 10 in CPOE in both years. Top 10 in off-target rate on downfield targets. So, Patrick Mahomes, bro, you can miss me in drafts with him. Like, I understand why people are going to gravitate to the volume and the bounce back and all this kind of stuff. He's got to bounce back a lot in his play, and the name Patrick Mahomes is cashing a lot of checks that he does not deserve right now.
I just pulled up a stat for you, D-Bro. Over the last 2 years, games with at least 21 fantasy points, Patrick Mahomes has 7. That's the same as Bo Nix, who was a rookie last year. 7. That's one more than Josh Dobbs. 7. Josh Allen, 23. Lamar Jackson, 22. Jalen Hurts, 20. Patrick Mahomes, 7. That's so bad. It's just the production's not there. You could say, the receiving core is better, but it's like, to your point, it's just, that's not how they're winning games anymore. And they are winning games. So like, I don't see like a real sense of urgency to I mean, the one thing looming in the background is like, okay, but what if the 2018 to 2022 Patrick Mahomes returns? Like 2022, 5,250 yards, 41 touchdowns, but like that's all there is, and like I don't see anything that makes us feel good about that returning.
I don't either. I mean, Hollywood Brown, do we get a full season out of him? What does he have left at this point of his career?
Even if we
Kelsey's
do,
another year older. Like, and then
Xavier Worthy wasn't impressive to me.
Yes, that's the other part. Like, I think everybody's forecasting this Xavier Worthy breakout, and it's like, for what? Oh, because he played the Rashee Rice role? You do realize when Rashee Rice is back, that's not his role anymore, so he's going to go back into being the non-target earning field stretcher that, again, shout out to Brett Whitefield, that can't track a deep ball to save his life? Okay, good luck.
Okay, I'll take the optimistic
approach. By the way,
here.
Xavier Worthy, like that's such a huge point, is like the dude is really, really fast, but he can't track a deep ball, like you said. And so like he had one of the worst catchable like percentage of he had one of the worst conversions on air yards that we've ever seen in the fantasy points data era. And then like going back to college, he had like a first percentile career yards per target on deep passes. So he was like, you know, supposedly like the fastest wide receiver ever, was one of the worst deep threats statistically. And so, yeah, like that's something people, you know, can overrate, where it's, yeah, he has the speed, but that doesn't necessarily mean he's a great deep threat and he's going to bring this extra element to the offense.
Okay, I'll take devil's advocate for both of you guys. Like, Scott, you referenced the 2022 season, which was another year where Mahomes was faded a little bit, not necessarily faded to this extent. And I'll say that the Super Bowl could be a wake-up call internally. We all believe Kansas City's a smart organization, and playing the sort of uber conservative football wins a ton of games, but when it matters the most, they've scored 22 points in the Super Bowl, and a lot of it was in garbage time, completely manhandled. I think the offensive line is going to be a little bit better this year. It was really, really bad last year. It was the most sacks conceded in the Mahomes era. And when we talk about the return of Rashee Rice, this gives Mahomes a first down maker that's going to make every single drive more sustained. And on the flip side, it could be a Rashee Rice could end up being his next, you know, top 5 scoring wide receiver that we haven't seen since the Tyreek Hill era. I'd say collectively, it's the most talented wide receiver room we've ever seen in Kansas City. When you add in Worthy, Rice, to Jalen Royals and Hollywood Brown, they seem to be very excited about Royals, who they got on day 3. And now we've got skinny Travis Kelce, who, you know, Joe Dolan's made some big arguments for Kelce at ADP. I understand Kelce looks cooked, but he looks significantly slimmer and more motivated right now. I just think it's Debro, you bring up QB6, but it's a massive gap between QB5 and QB6, depending on what draft you're in. Mahomes in like round 8, it's not something that I'm completely fading, especially in best ball. I think in the range of outcomes here, Mahomes getting back a little bit closer, like 2022 is not eons ago, and the guy has not been like injured. This is still in his wheelhouse to have another high scoring season where he's throwing a lot of touchdown passes. And I'll push back a little bit on both of you with the Worthy. The Worthy fading is out of control by a lot of people right now. And I understand you're bringing up the Rice, but we're talking about a player who at 21 years old had over 19 points scored in 5 out of his last 7 games played. We don't know that his game is fully evolved here and that he can't take a step further. Elite speed with a coach that knows how to scheme these sort of players. I am optimistic to a Rice and Worthy both scoring fantasy points and both returning value at ADP this year. And I'm not saying Mahomes is my flag plant quarterback by any means, but I don't think he's a fade for me as much as with you two guys. Debro.
Where are we fading Worthy, though? Like in this ADP, he's wide receiver 21, Theo. Like we're saying Mahomes is going to support 2 top 24 wide receivers.
I think with the with the regression of Kelce, and I think with the lack of a surefire running back that could be a little more wide receiver centric than we've seen in years past. I don't think that's out of the wheelhouse that this is the most wide receiver centric we see in Andy Reid offense for like the last 4 seasons. So I'm slightly optimistic about this Kansas City offense looking a lot better, being a lot more fantasy friendly, and I think that would reflect on Mahomes. So we'll butt heads on this one a little bit, Debro. Just a little.
I mean, No, I'm fine with the pushback, man. I feel like right now, and against reference in the ADP, Rashee Rice is being drafted as wide receiver 12, Xavier Worthy wide receiver 21. Like, I think there's meat on the bone for Rice, but I do not see it for Worthy. I don't.
Yeah, I mean, I think like Worthy, we're starting to see him in like the early fifth in some of these FFPC main events. If you're chasing upside there, depending on your build, I think a lot of it has to do with structure. I could see Worthy really returning value there. So I don't know.
man.
We go either way on this one. Scott, anything?
I got a lot of guys around that, like Mike Evans right ahead of him. What the hell did Mike Evans do to piss everybody off that he's a wide receiver 2 in ADP this year?
He's old.
Yeah, he's still freaking good. So anyway,
Scott, anything to add on the Kansas City discussion?
I just think for me, the answer of like who's the fade in the QB 1 to 12 range is everyone after the big four or the big five, really, realistically, just because there's such a tremendous gap there. And so like all the value, all the upside is at the position is like the scarcest asset. Just every week going to finish top 5 at the position. And, so many, it's a lot more replaceable. The deeper you go, you can find value off the waiver wire. Or you could find a late round league winner like a Jaden Daniels last year. I will say in that range, I do like Bo Nix. I do like Justin Fields. But yeah, I see a lot of value in the high end to mid QB2 range of drafts.
You made a great point before, Scott, and we're going to do a quarterback specific episode in July. Scott and I might do 2 of them where we try to like have like an Exodia quarterback like discussion before Scott actually drops it at the end of August. But Scott, one player that I thought you made a really poignant call on, and I'm not sure if this was on School of Scott or in one of your articles, was a lot of the upside arguments for some of the quarterbacks you're taking inside of the back end of QB1 land can all be made for Drake May due to his rushing production and just sort of the vibes you get from him as a player, where he'll put a lot on his shoulder. He's got a big arm, elite potential in terms of rushing touchdowns, elite potential in terms of rushing yardage and first down conversion. So like Drake May, quarterback 14, might have more upside than any of those quarterbacks in that back end of the first round when you factor in cost.
Yeah, I really don't think there's much difference between Drake May and Patrick Mahomes, Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray. And I know that sounds crazy, but yeah, he goes many rounds behind them. So I certainly like Drake May.
D-Bro, any favorite quarterback from you in that high-end QB2 discussion before we keep this moving?
Oh, dude, I'm all in on that spot of it. I mean, Brock Purdy at QB 13, give me all that action. JJ McCarthy, we'll talk about him later, at QB 17. You can honestly talk me into some Trevor Lawrence at QB 18. Like, I will be living in, dude, Matthew Stafford looks like he is primed for a QB1 season. I mean, we talk about all the touchdown regression candidates this year. You could talk about Stroud. You could talk about Geno Smith. You could talk about all these other quarterbacks about touchdown regression. Matthew Stafford is primed for it. All we need is like freaking health out of Puka and Devontae Adams, and he's going to bounce back. He's going to flirt with QB1 too.
Love it.
I was in an FFPC draft last week, and one of the team who waited longest on quarterback, I really liked their approach. They took Dak Prescott at QB 12, QB 13, and then the next round they took Justin Fields. Nice. And like beyond what you think of those quarterbacks is just what each of those players means. So like with a Dak Prescott, I think you have an amazing floor. Like I think he's basically a lock to finish as a low end QB1 at worst, but I also think he has upside to be, a top 6 quarterback on a fantasy point per game basis. And then, so you have upside and floor. And then the next round you took Justin Fields, who we know has that ceiling, the Konami code element. He could be, an easy mid-range QB1, even if he's not that good throwing the ball, which we've seen before. So I thought that was a great approach. And that's kind of like how I view the quarterback position is, if I'm not going to land one of the big 5, I'm okay waiting and it's all opportunity cost, loading up on wide receivers and running backs.
So we're going to talk about running backs today, Scott. But before we get it started, we're talking about Fantasy Points data and specifically some of the metrics that we can find to help you identify running back values whether it's managing your leagues or looking for values inside the fantasy draft. So I put down a bunch on the show sheet, but I was wondering what running back metrics are some of your favorites when we look at fantasy points data.
So I would like to spotlight the Bell Cow report. This is a tool that exists within the Fantasy Points data suite. And I really think this is just, D-Bro knows this is a very volume dependent position. Mm-hmm. And so like the two stats I focus on the most when it comes to running backs are snap share and XFP per game. And then within the data suite, you can, open up some filters. You can look at snap share when trailing, snap share when leading, different things like that to get a sense of game script sensitivity. But yeah, really just, I think that's the number one thing with running backs is focusing on volume. So the Bell Cow report, I think, is the best way to do it. You can look at snap share, carry share, route share, target share, XFP share. So shout out to the Fantasy Points data suite and the Bell Cow report.
Yeah, and the Bell Cow report alone is sort of worth the price of admission to Fantasy Points data. It's awesome, and it's so easy to read and so easy to take in. Constantly referencing that for all of my articles. I love that one, Scott. So let's get into it. The running back dead zone. A few years back, there was podcasts galore about the running back dead zone because it was really a thing. And it used to be considered to be like wherever you started the dead zone, some people would say the round 3 through 6 running back. Some people would reference the end of round 2 with guys just sort of sucked into the gravitational pull of elite running backs who weren't really elite running backs. Basically, it was a segment of drafts where running backs would come to die and the hit rates would be poor. Basically, a spot to sort of be very careful who you selected and at times just avoid entirely. But lately, the dead zone has not really been talked about because the last couple seasons have been very, very beneficial for finding dead zone production. And the last few seasons, not this one, you saw fewer running backs being sucked into round 1 and wide receivers were very much in vogue. So just to talk about dead zone production over the last couple of years, in 2022, Josh Jacobs was a veteran back with no buzz, tons of faders. He played in the first preseason game of the year, immediately was everybody's punchline that week on Twitter. He falls to the 7th round of drafts and went on to finish as the RB3 overall. Ramondre Stevenson in that same season as a second-year back who looked like he had the backfield. He was the more valuable running back to draft. Damian Harris still in New England, still had some backers that year. But Stevenson was sort of the buzz guy, but he was still available in the similar range, round 7, finished as the running back 7 overall. So 2 top 8 running backs in 2022 coming out of that dead zone. 2023, it was a perfect storm for dead zone running backs. The production was unbelievable. Breece Hall, Travis Etienne, and Rachaad White were all drafted somewhere between round 4 or later, and these players finished as top 6 scorers at the running back position, all 3 of them. Sort of all younger backs with receiving upside in that range. So this year, before we even dive into the dead zone and whether or not you should be avoiding this range or targeting it, let's take a look at the backs that are being drafted in round 4 or later and attempt to find a player that you guys think could have league-winning upside like some of the players that we referenced before. We'll start with you, D-Bro. What backs do you absolutely love this year in this range?
The guy that's screaming at me, I've been drafting a ton of, and I continue to sing his praises because I don't understand why he's even being drafted in this range, is Kenneth Walker. Can we all just understand that we lived in a world last year where Kenneth Walker was an RB1? He was the RB12 in fantasy points per game. So why are we drafting him with Seattle improving their offensive line this year? I don't think you're going to get worse offensive line play because they were bottom 5 last year. He's still one of the most efficient running backs in the NFL. And he proved last year, and he coffin nailed all of the narratives coming out as a prospect that he wasn't a good receiving back, couldn't catch passes. Per fantasy points data last year, 45 qualifying running backs. Kenneth Walker, 3rd in first downs per route run, 6th in targets per route run, 6th in receiving yards per game. He led the freaking NFL in missed tackles forced per attempt and 10th in yards after contact per attempt. This feels like similar case to Josh Jacobs of yesteryear, where the guy was really good in efficiency metrics. All we needed was health and some things to line up for him. Why are we drafting Kenneth Walker in the 4th round? This guy has league-winning top 5 upside. I have him as an RB1 in my ranks. I still don't understand why we're drafting him as an RB2 or why he's even available at this point in the draft.
He was my answer as well, and I actually took him with Dan Williamson in an FFPC main event that we're splitting right now, a slow one. We took him at the 310, a little bit ahead of ADP, because I agree with everything you said. And what's funny when you look at Kenneth Walker is the last 2 seasons, Seattle was like bottom 6 in rushing production, and I think that's one of the main reasons that they hired Clint Kubiak. We're going to see a very high usage of the fullback position. All the beat writers are talking about this in Seattle, and this is going to create just another edge for Kenneth Walker and other skill position players in Seattle. Scott, we talked about this with Jacob Gibbs, where this Seattle offense might be a little bit underrated, and there's multiple ADP hits here. And if that's the case, I think Walker is going to be the biggest beneficiary. Debro, you see him fall into the 4th round sometimes. The explosive runs, how he broke through as a pass catcher last year after we never saw that at any point in his career. Now I think a much improved situation schematically. Everything's sort of crying out for a really big Walker year. I'm completely agree with you. And I'll give one more player that I think could also be really, really big. And we're not even going to talk about him in today's discussion, besides this one, where we're really focusing on round 5 and beyond. But there's a chance if we did this show in a month, he would have made the list, because you're starting to see drafts where Omarion Hampton is starting to slip. And if you mess around and let me get Omarion Hampton inside of round 5, I'm all about it. Because when we're talking about chasing that sort of upside at the running back position, to get this sort of 1st round talent in what could be a very good offense with a offensive coordinator and a head coach who both want to run the ball, I think that the Najee Harris steam is causing a little more Omarion Hampton fear than there should be right now in the community. Hampton's the one you want there, and if he starts slipping inside of round 5, he's going to be just as much a smash for me as Walker inside of round 4. Scott, you want to take it away here?
Yeah, your question on the show sheet was which running back has league winning value from round 4 on. So it would have been probably more difficult if you said round 5 on, because round 4 is for sure the spot to be drafting a running back. In round 4, I'm seeing Kenneth Walker, who I agree is like the biggest no-brainer. He just needs to stay healthy. If he does, we know he's one of the most talented running backs in football, and volume's going to be great. And then you have Breece Hall, who, I said in our last show, 75 plus targets, 200 plus carries in each of his last 2 years. That's like Matt Forte, LaDainian Tomlinson, Le'Veon Bell, prime Austin Eckler type usage. I think he gets that again this year. I think we get a nice little efficiency boost with a more creative offense. You don't have the statue Aaron Rodgers back there, probably a more competent offense. So believe in his talent. And then you have Alvin Kamara, who finished as the RB5 by fantasy points per game last year, RB1 by XFP per game by a landslide, by the way, 1.5 XFP per game more than anyone else. So I would love any of those running backs in round 4. I think that's for sure the place to be. If that's the historical dead zone, it's not this year. And, every year is its own unique special snowflake. But yeah, love those running backs.
Debro, of all those players Scott mentioned, I'm most curious to get your take on Breece Hall right now, because I think he's the polarizing one. There's some really, really smart people completely agreeing with Scott on this one, where Breece Hall is going to end up being an immense value inside of round 4. There's others with a lot of trepidation and fear when surrounding Hall. We started seeing this in the dynasty streets, Debro, as we got to like NFL draft land, and it was the sell low trades for Breece Hall. You started seeing those. Now it's starting to trickle its way into redraft. A little bit of hype right now with guys like Braylon Allen, some coach speak for guys like Isaiah Davis. And every time Aaron Glenn is asked, he sort of compliments all 3 of these backs, which is not what Breece Hall managers want to hear. But then on the flip side, they don't have anybody who can catch the ball. And how does he not get a 19% target share? So I present the bear, I present the bull. Where are you at with Breece Hall?
So just being transparent here, I had Breece Hall as a mid RB2, and then prepping for this show, I kind of went back and looked at the context of this offense a little bit more. Breece Hall where he's at in consensus, which a lot of places, I mean, the ADP we're citing right now has Breece Hall as RB13. I bumped him up after researching him more. He's my RB13 right now. I want to be at consensus because I think, and I've talked about this in previous weeks on the Fantasy Pro show where I had some concerns about Breece Hall's target share and repeating the targets and the receptions. But the thing we keep coming back to about this Jets offense is, okay, outside of Garrett Wilson, who the hell is going to catch the freaking ball? Okay, well, Breece Hall could be the wide receiver too on this team. And for all the things we talk about with running quarterbacks and they're not going to check it down and the passing volume and stuff like that, they don't have another high-end target earner in this passing offense outside of Garrett Wilson. And over the last 4 years for Justin Fields, I thought this was incredibly telling per fantasy points data. Justin Fields has quietly been top 12 in check down rate in 3 of the last 4 seasons as a starting NFL quarterback. So he's going to utilize Breece Hall. If we get creative utilization for Breece Hall, which, I mean, come on, man. The last few years, looking at the construct of like the Jets offense, it's been god-awful. We all know that. And I'm not telling you that just like Breece Hall is going to get 100 freaking targets in this offense, but can he get close to where he's been at in previous years? And we've all talked about the offensive line upgrades for the Jets. So if he's running behind a top 10 offensive line, Justin Fields is going to open up running lanes, so we get a bump in efficiency there. Justin Fields has been top 12 in check down rate. I mean, this offense throws the ball 500 times, which is nothing like crazy. That's still bottom 10, bottom 5. Breece Hall's still going to produce well, man. Like, yeah, I'm more in on him after researching for this show.
You know what? Like the one variable for the Jets that not enough people are talking about, and I'll give a shout out to Sigmund Bloom, big fan of a big friend of School of Scott podcast. I had Sigmund on like super early in the offseason. We talked about some new offensive situations and just Tanner Engstrand. All the vibes with Tanner Engstrand just scream an offensive coordinator who's going to be like Ben Johnson, going to be super aggressive and super creative. And if we get that sort of creativity and aggressiveness, how does it not help Breece Hall? The Tanner Engstrand stuff, like this guy, I think he might be really, really sharp. For Aaron Glenn to get his first head coaching job, and instead of taking some retread who's been an offensive coordinator for 4 or 5 years in the league, he goes with an unknown in Tanner Engstrand, who he has familiarity with from his time in Detroit. I think that was a really like inspired hire. And I think Engstrand could be the one to really, really help with Hall. And if we see consolidation with a lot of Justin Fields rush attempts, a lot of targets for Garrett Wilson, and a lot of targets for Breece Hall in this Jets offense, they could be a really fun team in fantasy where all 3 of those guys hit. Scott, your thoughts?
Yeah. So I mean, he was the passing game coordinator for, the best offense in football these last 2 years. So I think that's exciting. I loved Debo's stat on Justin Fields, the check down merchant. He had a 15% check down rate last year. No one was above 12%. Derek Carr was second. We know that worked out well for Alvin Kamara. And you listen to these quotes from Breece Hall, like he's talking about Aaron Glenn. He's talking about Tanner Engstrand, referring to him as a bell cow. And so you have this Lions backfield, which far and away led all backfields in XFP per game. By fantasy points per game, it was like 20% more than the next closest. It was just a heavy committee. It was like a perfect 50-50 committee. But the way Breece Hall is talking about it, through what the coaches are telling him, is he's getting prepared to be a focal point of the offense through the air and on the ground. And yeah, I could see him being a massive bell cow. And even if it's not, it feels like the floor is, like I said, 200 plus carries, 75 plus targets. And that's really rare, really valuable work. There's just no one else in this offense. So I think, by XFP share, by XFP per team snap, I think he's going to be top 7. I think Garrett Wilson too.
I don't want to sidetrack us too fast, but I'm really curious because I highly respect, and I think he's the best projections guy in the business, Chris Wecht. Where does he have Breece Hall's target share? Where are his targets this year?
I'll pull it up right now.
He's actually really low on Breece Hall. He's someone that we've been going back and forth on. But yeah,
we're going to snip this and clip this and send this to Wecht after the show, right? Okay, cool.
I was actually just in DMs with him this morning. Yeah, we're trying to schedule our next projection summit where we're going to go like toe to toe. We're going to battle it out. We're going to go to war. I don't think we're going to live stream this, maybe for subs only, but at a bare minimum, we'll do it behind the scenes. We'll record it and then we'll clip it for some of the best, most entertaining segments. I think Breece Hall is going to be a good one.
Now it gets a little more difficult. And I have an article coming out, my zero and hero RB target list. It's going to be on Fantasy Points soon. And I identify players as targets or values. A target would be a guy that I'm willing to reach a few spots for. A value is a player who structurally really helps me get RB2 value with a hero RB build, or I can catch up at running back inside of a zero RB build. And one player who I'm really, really high on in this range that checks off a box of being a target is Chuba Hubbard. Chuba Hubbard's a player that took a massive step forward last year, year one of the Dave Canales offense. We think Carolina is going to be much improved. All three of us are big fans of Tet McMillan. Tet McMillan gives them a bona fide alpha wide receiver. And we saw Bryce Young take big steps over the second half of last season. Chuba Hubbard volume was fantastic last year. And this is not a one-year sample size when you factor in Dave Canales also giving a ton of volume to Rachaad White in 2023. A Dave Canales RB1 has been, in the last two seasons combined, is top 5 overall among all running backs in touches. So we have the volume there. Debro, am I wrong to be this bullish on Chuba Hubbard when this year I have to pay a round 5 price tag for a player I was able to get in the double-digit rounds last year?
Man, I'm going to say this. I went, again, prepping for this show, I went back and put Chuba Hubbard under the microscope and looking at, honestly, how his season panned out. I walked away from looking at all of that much more scared about Chuba Hubbard than I did initially, because at first glance, I was totally with you, Theo. Like, I had Chuba Hubbard as like a top 14 or 15 back in my rankings. I've since dropped him because if you look at how his season played out, I mean, he had a pure run out, and I don't know if he gets that again this year. Like, so just to break everything down, Miles Sanders last year left in week 10. He was out weeks 10 through 17. If you look at Hubbard's role, so to begin the season, he wasn't that full-time bell cow. Like, first 4 games of the season, he played 65% or less of the snaps. I kind of wonder, is that the real role that Carolina wants him to play? And because Miles Sanders got hurt, because, yeah, like in weeks 1 through 9, 54 to 83% of the snaps. So, like, it did ramp up. But in weeks 10 through 16, with Hubbard and no Miles Sanders, no competition, then you're talking about that's where he got to the 78 to 97% of snaps. And the other part about this is he's not a great pass catcher. He's not efficient in that way. And if you look at how he started off last year with Miles Sanders on the field, Chuba Hubbard's route per dropback rate was only 48.6%, a 9.7% target share. Now, after week 10, no Miles Sanders, that bumped up to 64%, man. And again, small sample size here. But weeks 1 through 3 with Miles Sanders incorporated, Chuba Hubbard living in that 50 to 60% snap range, in the red zone, Chuba Hubbard had 3 carries and Miles Sanders had 2. And in that small sample, Hubbard only had a 35% route per dropback rate. So I kind of wonder if a lot of the Hubbard usage last year was based out of necessity because they didn't have anybody else they trusted. Now with Rico Dowdle, because the other thing that Carolina did show us in the offseason, if you believe that Chuba Hubbard is truly this every down bell cow back, not only did they go out and they added Rico Dowdle, but they also went and added a pass catching specialist in Trevor Etienne in the draft. So are we going to actually get the Hubbard 70 to 80, 90% of snaps this year? Or are we going to get the 50 to 60%? Then maybe he's splitting red zone usage and he's not a good pass catcher because yards per route run, he's never been efficient in that realm. I have a lot more questions looking closer at Hubbard than I did initially walking into it.
Yeah. So I was all in on Rachaad White 2 years ago. Why? Because Dave Canales RB1, that worked out really well for us. Last year, I was all in on Jonathan Brooks, but I did mention, make sure you draft Chuba Hubbard to insulate yourself until he comes back. And if you got Chuba Hubbard, that worked out really well for you. To me, I think he's a great pick. I love him. You look at what he did last year, week 12 on, he was third in XFP per game. And this didn't really come out of nowhere. 2023, same stretch, week 12 on, led all running backs and carries, was productive, is not a good pass catcher, but the volume was there. And it's not just that, let's not forget, before Jonathan Brooks suffered that injury, like he's just totally dead, they extended Chuba Hubbard. They made him one of the top 12 highest paid running backs in football. That's a massive vote of confidence. So I feel really good about this. I like Chuba Hubbard. What I will say, though, is I think Rico Dowdle is a great late round pick because there is some uncertainty here. I am getting some Mike Davis vibes from Chuba Hubbard, where I don't know that I'm totally sold on the talent, but we know this role, Dave Canales RB1, is so valuable. So, maybe this is a case where you handcuff Hubbard, or, just make sure Rico Dowdle is a late round target. But I'll say I like both running backs a lot.
Okay, so we made some cases for Chuba Hubbard, and Chuba Hubbard's going at 5.3 right now in these 350s. A player who's going right around him is RJ Harvey. And RJ Harvey was a player where probably wouldn't have made this list if J.K. Dobbins wouldn't have signed, because we started seeing RJ Harvey in those early FFPC main events going inside of round 4. Now he's going to settle into round 5. So, Debro, is RJ Harvey now the ultimate value pick inside of round 5 because of the J.K. Dobbins sort of pulling him down into a easier to click range? Or do you have way more fear about rostering him because of the presence of Dobbins, who had his best season as a pro last year in LA?
At this spot in ADP, RJ Harvey is auto-draft. If he's available at this spot in the 5th round, I'm drafting him almost every freaking time, guys. Like, unless my build, like I've gotten 2 RBs or things like that. Like, I love his spot in this draft. I'm not worried about J.K. Dobbins. Pick whichever lane you want. We've seen Sean Payton support multiple running backs. The usage has been there for multiple running backs. He's had multiple running backs in the top 24, top 36. J.K. Dobbins was a volume compiler, but he wasn't amazingly efficient. He's also not a pass catcher, and we know that Sean Payton is going to utilize the running backs in the passing game. And for everybody that says, yes, but Audric Estime and Jaleel McLaughlin and RJ Harvey's worries about pass pro. Do y'all realize that Sean Payton only trusted Estime and Jaleel McLaughlin in a combined 16 pass pro reps last year? They're not getting that role. J.K. Dobbins is good in pass pro, but I don't really want the guy that's pass blocking. I want the guy that's running routes and probably on early downs running routes. And you look at Dobbins, he doesn't have that pass catching component. Like, careers, 0.72 yards per route run. Even if you go back to college and we compare him and Harvey as prospects, he still wasn't that guy. 1.0 yards per route run. RJ Harvey had a 1.44 collegiate yards per route run. Is that elite? No, but he did have some elite seasons sprinkled in there. In 2022, 1.75. That was 11th best amongst all FBS running backs with at least 20 targets. So in a Sean Payton offense that we can go back all the way to like New Orleans, but even if you just want to look at Denver, last 2 years, top 5 in target share to the running back position. Dobbins isn't taking that role. Jaleel McLaughlin, he didn't trust him in that role. Estime can't catch a pass to save his damn life. I don't understand why we're drafting RJ Harvey this low, because people were, even when he was sneaking up, he still wasn't high enough, man. Like, I've been saying this all offseason. Like, RJ Harvey and Omarion Hampton's ADPs should be flipped. Hampton has more competition in his backfield. Greg Roman doesn't use his running backs in the passing game. And Denver, RJ Harvey has less competition and a coordinator that is going to use his running backs in the passing game. And yet, because of name value, and honestly, probably a lot of like some bias because people weren't that high or high enough on RJ Harvey pre-draft, that they want to push back about it. Because if an Omarion Hampton had landed in freaking Denver, Omarion Hampton would be drafted right now as like a top. He'd be an RB1.
He'd be 15th He'd be 15th overall.
Yes, if you take the name out of this, Omarion Hampton in Denver would be drafted as an RB1, but RJ Harvey is not getting that type of love because people weren't high enough. My RB5 pre-draft and actually my RB I had to go back and look at it. I think it was my RB3 in this class post-draft for Dynasty rookie rankings. So I don't get it, man. RJ Harvey is pretty much like, RB3 post-draft. He's auto-draft at that spot for me.
Denver was top 5 in running back targets last year, and they were first overall in running back targets 2 seasons ago. I like a lot of your arguments here, Debro, when it comes to RJ Harvey. I think round 5 for him is so much easier. And Scott, you referenced the RB competition that he would have had inside of round 4. Way easier to click him inside of round 5, especially if they continue targeting the running backs at this rate. Where are you at in terms of his current value?
Yeah, it's a Sean Payton coached team. The backfield has finished top 6 in fantasy points per game in 10 of his last 13 seasons. So we know there's a lot of value from this backfield. Now it's really just a question of what percentage of the pie does RJ Harvey get? And I don't know, I think a pretty big one. Like, it was so crazy to see people panicking over J.K. Dobbins, who like has missed 90% of all possible games since he came into the league. Like, everyone's like, oh, like J.K. Dobbins is dust, J.K. Dobbins. And now we're panicking. Now we're moving RJ Harvey 2 rounds down. Like, that seems silly to me.
Do you agree with Debro that that's an indictment on Estime and McLaughlin to sign J.K. Dobbins in June after OTAs?
Yeah, but I mean, like, it's the same. Like, were we counting on Estime? Were we counting on Jaleel McLaughlin? Like, drafting Harvey as high as they did was an indictment on them. I think they're Jags. They're just a guy, you know.
Draft RJ Harvey as you were. Enjoy the discount, everyone. We're sort of all in agreement on this one. Okay, so let's keep it going. A lot of times inside of the dead zone, we're going to Billy Bean it, and we're going to find guys and say, why are they slipping to this range? James Conner is one that's super interesting because we have 4 straight years where Conner has averaged 15 points per game or more. Last season, he played a career-high 16 games. He's 30 years old, though, guys. And in previous seasons, he has missed time. But the vibes in Arizona are positive with Conner. Scott, you referenced Chuba Hubbard getting a contract extension. James Conner was also given a contract extension this offseason, extending him 2 more years. And the Trey Benson threat that we thought we were going to see last year, Amari DiMercato was running ahead of Benson for most of the year. I mean, the whole first half of the year before Benson sort of took over that role. Debro, is James Conner a value here, or are you fading the old guy in this range?
Oh, hell no. I'm drafting all the James Conner I can, man. I don't. James Conner just continually gets disrespected. It's every year everybody's like, oh, he's going to get hurt. Oh, he's going to get hurt. Do we realize that even over the last few years, he's played 13 or more games in every season for Arizona? He's been the RB. You mentioned Theo RB15 last year in fantasy points per game. RB13, RB9, RB7 in the years prior to that. And he's still one of the most efficient running backs in the NFL. Like, per fantasy points data, he was 2nd in missed tackles forced per attempt, 11th in yards after contact per attempt, top 10 explosive run rate. This dude was also awesome in the passing game last year. He was top 10 in both yards per route run and receiving yards per game. The constitution of this offense is exactly the same as it was last year. It's going to run through Connor, McBride, maybe Marvin Harrison Jr. if Petzing can get out of his own damn way this year. I don't understand. Again, another year where James Conner is a supreme value.
I also had him as a target in my article. I'm with you. I think this is like the only, you referenced Mike Evans earlier. This is the same argument. The reason people are fading him is because he's old. And I love the people that say, you know, the guy doesn't play every game. Scott, he doesn't play every game. I can't draft him. We don't take zeros. If you draft your team well, you're going to have other running back options. The argument against a guy like Kenneth Walker, him missing a few games every single season, you don't take zeros those weeks, and you don't take zeros with James Conner. So if he plays 14 games instead of 17 games in the 6th round, and he's giving me the exact same points per game as he has the last 4 seasons, he's going to continue to help me really play catch up when I'm in this sort of a build where I'm attacking this range of the draft. Scott, your thoughts?
Yeah, this is just one of those guys where every year he's being drafted as the RB 23, And every year he finishes the RB9 fantasy points per game, whatever it is. I think he's a great pick. This was really like a Chris Weck special. Projection super high on him. I'm in the MFL 10 of death, like this long running expert best ball, and comparing ADP versus projections, and he really stood out. And so I had to hit up my guy Coach Speak Index about it, and I'm like, you have any thoughts on James Conner or Trey Benson? And he was like, yeah, I think they want to build a statue in honor of James Conner. And every time Gannon mentions Trey Benson, he always hits you with the if he can take a leap. And so it doesn't seem like they have too much confidence in Trey Benson. They have all the confidence in the world in James Conner. I think this is a really strong value, especially in best ball formats. Really, really safe pick with upside.
Let's start out with Scott for this one. One polarizing player is TreVeyon Henderson. He's going at the 5-7 right now. So occasionally we see him slip into round 6, but mostly a guy that goes inside of round 5. And when we talked about a number of these guys who have hit from the dead zone in years past, I referenced younger running backs with receiving upside. We talked about Rachaad White, Breece Hall, Travis Etienne, Ramondre Stevenson in his big season. All of them were young and caught a lot of passes. Scott, does TreVeyon Henderson not check off this box, specifically when we're looking at the other weapons around him in New England, or do you sort of have trepidation on him at this sort of elevated ADP?
Yeah, I for sure have trepidation when he's right in between RJ Harvey and James Conner by ADP. I'm not touching him. I just don't think he's a good pick right there, but he's also a player where like I want to monitor the coach speak, what the beat writers are saying. Right now, like I'm not sure Ramondre Stevenson is completely dead like everyone thinks. Like this might have been more just a compliment, explosive play threat, but again, it's June. We'll see what they're saying in late July, August.
Debro, your thoughts?
I'm with Scott. Like, I love TreVeyon. I am gonna probably, if I'm doing early drafts right now, I'm probably gonna avoid him. And I'm drafting all the RJ Harvey, James Conner in a similar range over him, because I'm hoping, and I think we probably do get TreVeyon Henderson unless like camp speak just goes nuts this year. Like RB20 kind of feels like his ceiling right now in ADP. Like I don't see him going higher than that. So if I'm going to get exposure to him, I'm probably going to wait later into the summer, where hopefully he drops, back into RB24, like high end RB3 range. Like if we get some hype on DeAndre Swift or anybody else, or some of these other running backs that can hop him in ADP, I think I'm in on TreVeyon depending on the cost. And right now the cost doesn't match up with it. But if he drops a little bit lower, I am in on TreVeyon if we can get him in some drafts where he falls behind these other running backs, because pass catching upside is there. Josh McDaniels, 4 of his last 5 seasons as a play caller, full-time play caller, inside the top 10 in backfield target share. And TreVeyon's got that skill set to his game. I mean, top 22 in receiving grade in his last 2 collegiate seasons. We know the big play potential is there. I think for me, it just comes down to ADP, price point, and honestly, for all of these New England Patriots, I mean, throw Drake May into that too. What is the upside of this offense for scoring potential? Because TreVeyon could be awesome. He could be catching a crap ton of passes, but if, again, the New England Patriots are not going to field a highly productive offense, like this could go sideways pretty easily. Like, I mean, the wide receiver room is kind of held together with chewing gum and duct tape right now. I mean, Kyle Williams, everybody hopes is going to be somebody that stepped forward. Maybe he's the next Jalen Polk. Who the hell knows? You got Hunter Henry and Stephon Diggs. What do we get him out of him? Although I am in on Diggs at cost. So I am in on TreVeyon. I want to see the price point dip before I'm going to start drafting him, though.
Yeah, for me, I agree with you. I'd rather have him inside of round 6 if it's a redraft league.
Yeah.
I have a ton of TreVeyon Henderson exposure in Dynasty. I'm super enthusiastic about him having a bunch of big-time fantasy seasons. And I think that my exposure in redraft and best ball this year will shade a little bit more towards the best ball side. I do think he's going to have some really, really big spike weeks. I don't know if the scoring is going to be quite as consistent to kind of justify taking him inside of round 5, but I'd be kind of okay if he slips a little bit more. Scott, let's stick with you on this one. Joe Mixon was one of last year's big success stories out of the dead zone. averaged over 17 points per game, had 12 touchdowns last year, despite missing a few games. This year, the Texans added Woody Marks in the draft, who had the most receptions of any running back drafted this year as a collegiate. And now they recently signed Nick Chubb. Joe Mixon's also dealt with some nagging injuries off the field. Is this a classic fade old guy situation at the end of round 5, or do you have some hope and optimism that he'll hit again?
Yeah, this is probably another guy I still don't think I have a great read on. He's certainly not someone I'm super excited to draft. I thought it was funny, people panicking over Nick Chubb. It's the same thing as like with J.K. Dobbins. Is like, you don't want to draft Nick Chubb. Like the people who are scared of Nick Chubb and J.K. Dobbins are not drafting. Oh, they're like, no, they're dead. But also I'm worried about Harvey and Mixon. One thing I think is interesting is the new Texans OC, Nick Caley, came from the Rams and really helped transition that offense into one of the top man blocking run schemes. They jumped all the way to first in the NFL in percentage of carries on man gap scheme runs. And I thought it was interesting because Joe Mixon is a lot better from man gap schemes, according to FantasyPoints data since 2021. It goes from 3.8 yards per carry to 4.4 yards per carry. Much better than Nick Chubb or Dameon Pierce. So maybe that's a perfect fit for him. But I don't think we see the uber workhorse role he got last year. But again, don't have the best read on Mixon. Still want to monitor code speak.
Yeah, and I sort of agree with you, Scott, that the Nick Chubb signing was not something that really scared me. The Woody Marks one does, though. I know Brett Whitefield is optimistic that he could end up having sort of a de facto James White-like role in this offense as a pass-catching back. So I think when you take those receptions away from Mixon, I'm betting him to have the same sort of touchdown success this year. I think that this offense could be way more pass-happy in general. Plus, we have issues on the offensive line in Houston. A lot of question marks for me. I was happy to have Mixon last year on a few teams, but I'll be passing on him at ADP this year. D-Bro, you get us started on this one. We're inside of round 6, and we're talking about another rookie running back. And this is a player that always goes inside of round 6, whether you're on Underdog, whether you're on FFPC. Quinshon Judkins just lives here. He's a middle of round 6 selection over the last few days of FFPC 350s. He's the 6.6 in ADP, 6th overall pick inside of the 6th round. Are you down with that ADP for Quinshon? You're shaking your head already, D-Bro.
Hell no. I wasn't in on Quinshon as a prospect. I'm not down on this ADP, man. I think I understand people chasing the volume and stuff, and I get he's going to be the early down hammer. Like, I had questions about him as a prospect, and look at just ADP. We all have questions about the Cleveland Browns as an offense, as a team. Who's going to play quarterback? Even if you say Quinshon's going to be the early down grinder, okay, well, what if this team is bad and they're trailing a lot and then we get more Dylan Sampson than anybody thinks we're going to get because if he's the passing down component, because Quinshon we know is not going to catch passes. That doesn't happen. Like, he's not an efficient pass catcher. Like, this guy over the last 2 years in college was 55th and 97th in yards per route run. You even look at it, and I love how this got glossed over throughout, like whether it was draft capital or prospect talk and stuff. I know Scott was professed Quinshon hater as well, but I just don't understand where we lose everything, gets lost in the sauce of how this dude was not efficient at Ohio State, and people will talk about the context of he was just the early down grinder and it was the runs and all this kind of stuff. Dude, this guy was outside the top 80 running backs in yards after contact per attempt over the last 2 years, outside the top 40 in breakaway run rate, outside the top 65 in elusive rating. And now he goes to an offense that we have questions about. He doesn't have pass catching upside. And yet people are drafting him in the 6th round, and we're drafting Quinshon over David Montgomery, Kaleb Johnson, Tony Pollard. Even if you wanted to go with DeAndre Swift narratives and a Ben Johnson approach, like, why is all of that happening?
I'm fading Quinshon Judkins at this ADP as well. I liked him more as a prospect than the two of you guys did. And I think down the line, if we see like an improved like offensive situation in Cleveland in 2026, I think Quinshon could be a play. But Debro, you also referenced that like they draft Dylan Sampson inside of round 4. I think there's going to be a weekly role for him, whether it's 65-35, it's going to be some sort of a split backfield where some valuable touches are going to go to Sampson. So the volume argument for Judkins on what could be a really low scoring argument is out. If I want Browns, I'm drafting David Njoku. I'm not afraid of Jerry Jeudy, but I'm avoiding Quinshon Judkins, who's also, interestingly, in most formats, he's the first Brown off the board. So a lot to dislike about the Quinshon Judkins situation for me. Scott, is Quinshon mid film versus analytics episode was a hit. Talk about why you're fading him here as well.
Yeah, I'm just a massive hater. I also don't think the environment is good. It's, the team that's expected to score the fewest points on offense this year, they're going to be trailing a lot. That's bad game script, especially bad game script for Quinshon Judkins, who doesn't catch passes, wasn't particularly good running the ball. Yeah, so I'm just a hater, just totally out. ADP is really bad. If he fell a few rounds, I'd still be out.
And I'll start with you on this one, Scott, because I know Debro's on this train. But why is Quinshon Judkins going ahead of Kaleb Johnson? And I could have saved Kaleb Johnson. We'll talk about the Pittsburgh backfield when we rip through the ambiguous ones as well. But Kaleb Johnson's the 6'9" right now, and Mike Tomlin's praising him. Pittsburgh's going to have a better offense than Cleveland this year. Like, why? What's the argument here? Talk about Kaleb Johnson, the 6'9".
Yeah, I mean, he's a way better pick than Quinshon Judkins, I think. Still not someone I'm super excited to draft and redraft. He's a bit better in best ball. To me, he's just like, he's going to give you what Najee gave you last year, but a little bit better, a little more points, better efficiency. Don't think he's going to be a league winner or anything for redraft, but yeah, for sure, strong value in best ball.
All right, Debro, cook, because this is your guy.
I do think he has league winning upside. I mean, dude, Najee Harris soaked up 299 touches last year. That was 10th most amongst running backs. Even if we nerf that and you give Kaleb 250, it's still close to top 20 amongst running backs. And this team told us everything we needed to know or not know about Jalen Warren. I love Jalen Warren. I've been touting his praises for years. But the Pittsburgh Steelers told us everything we needed to know when they gave the high tender to Jalen Warren, and then they go out and they draft Kaleb Johnson to come in and be the new Najee Harris. Except, guess what? Unlike Najee, Kaleb can rip explosive runs, and he did it all in his final season in college, man. Like, this guy was awesome. So we got the volume is going to be in there. You have Aaron Rodgers who's going to check down, and he's going to be better. Like, I'm not telling you Aaron Rodgers is going to be a great quarterback. I think he's going to still stink. But good defense behind him. Hopefully this offensive line takes another step forward. We get checkdowns from Aaron Rodgers because, again, the pass game weapons outside of DK Metcalf, Pat Freiermuth, we that excited? Like, I'll take some Calvin Austin, Roman Wilson, and best ball, but I don't think either one of those guys are going to sniff 100 targets this year. So Kaleb Johnson's going to get work in their early downs. We know they're going to run the freaking ball. They were top 5 in rushing attempts last year. I don't think that goes away in an Arthur Smith offense with Pittsburgh Steelers. So you're telling me I get Najee Harris and I get that type of volume outlook, but a guy that can break long runs because he was 5th in breakaway percentage. He was 8th in yards after contact per attempt. And he's not a non-zero. Like, it's not like he's a zero in the passing game. Like, final year collegiate yards per route run, 1.29 yards per route run, which is not, I'm not telling you that's stellar, but that is above the watermark of what is passable for him to get checkdowns.
Every time Mike Tomlin opens his mouth this summer, you're going to see Caleb's ADP rise a little bit to the point that I think Kaleb Johnson might be a 5th-round pick by the time we're drafting in the big money drafts in like August and September. Like, Mike Tomlin just can't seem to get out of his way with this one. He talked about just how much they like Kaleb Johnson, about what a positive impact he can make. And they talked about this archetype of larger backs who have room to grow in their profile, referenced Le'Veon Bell and Rashard Mendenhall when talking about Kaleb Johnson. That's in a recent article. I tweeted that out. Like, I think that Kaleb Johnson, this is a really easy click. and exactly the kind of upside play we want inside the dead zone. And the fact that Jalen Warren is running back 32 in ADP is like the reason we're seeing Kaleb go in this range. So very interesting one. Scott, let's look at two other running backs, both in the same division. David Montgomery and DeAndre Swift have literally a tied ADP. They're both going on average as the 6-7, the seventh pick inside of the sixth round over the last few days. Montgomery, DeAndre Swift, or pass on both?
I think it's a little context dependent. So David Montgomery, I think he's a really strong best ball pick because he's just like a lock to beat this ADP. And then for redraft, maybe if I went 0 RB and I just needed guaranteed points, I think he's a really strong pick. And there's like a contingent upside argument there that everyone's making with Jahmyr Gibbs. Jahmyr Gibbs is, a top 6 pick because it's, what if David Montgomery goes down? Then he's this league winner scoring 35 fantasy points per game. It's similar with David Montgomery. What if Jahmyr Gibbs goes down? He could be, a top 3, top 5 running back, fantasy points per game. So he has that. And then DeAndre Swift is like a player I keep thinking about where it's like, are we all off on him? Maybe it's just Roschon Johnson in the Jamal Williams role and he gets 17 rushing touchdowns and it's that sort of committee. Or I don't think the Bears are going to be able to have 17 rushing touchdowns like the Lions did a few years back, but you get what I'm saying. But yeah, Jahmyr Gibbs has we all thought the Bears were going to draft a running back, and I think they tried to, but they didn't. So now you're left with this. He's the only guy who has that familiarity with the Ben Johnson scheme. Ben Johnson's Lions every year led the league in backfield XFP, backfield fantasy points per game. And so I think he's interesting. I think he's one of these players with upside that, no one's really excited to draft, but I see an argument for him.
Debra, where are you at on this one?
I think DeAndre Swift is closer to the typical dead zone running back argument than a lot of people are willing to talk about. Like, we're all projecting volume because we don't believe in Roschon. We don't believe in anybody else in that backfield. And I'm not saying that that's wrong, but that doesn't mean that DeAndre Swift is any freaking good, man. Like, he was outside the top
That's
30.
fair too, yeah.
He was outside the top 32 running backs in every single efficiency metric that you can pull up on fantasy points data. Mm-hmm. So if he's not efficient and we're chasing the volume because, much like Zamir White and Alexander Madison of yesteryear, who else is going to take the volume if not for this player? Then doesn't that feel like that is the exact dead zone running back argument? Like, that's the framework for it? Am I wrong?
I mean, both these guys are sort of the definition of dead zone running backs. David Montgomery, I understand the bullish argument to take him sort of where we were taking him last year. Scott, I had these guys listed as elite duo in my backfield breakdown article at Fantasy Points. It's like the one guy where he's clearly the top handcuff in football to Jahmyr Gibbs, but I'm viewing David Montgomery as more of a handcuff this year than an elite value that I want to put in my RB2 spot, because I do think that what we saw from Jahmyr Gibbs to end the season last year, you can't put that back in the box and have a split usage backfield. I think it's going to be Jahmyr Gibbs in year 3, taking on just enough that David Montgomery becomes a lot more touchdown dependent. And he's really good at scoring touchdowns. I'll give him that, but it's not something I really want to bank on. And I agree with you, Debro, that Swift is the definition of a dead zone running back, and exactly the type of profile that's got us in trouble over the last few years has been a player that we don't necessarily believe in, but gets this incredible opportunity. Zamir White, Alexander Madison the last 2 years. It's not fair for me to put DeAndre Swift into that category, guys, where DeAndre Swift is a guy who's had immense fantasy success. But Scott, I'll argue with you on this one. If the Bears would have taken Cam Scadaboo in round 4 or Bashal Tutin inside of round 4, where would you have been at on your DeAndre Swift argument for this season, let alone some of those other guys?
Or even Devin Neal. Let's give him Devin Neal in round 6.
I'm not going with that one. Yeah, we're not doing that one. But we'll say two backs that Scott evaluated and really liked throughout the process.
Well, they tried.
Yeah, I know.
I think that was the reports, is they tried to get TreVeyon Henderson. They just missed out on him. They tried to get I don't know, someone else, and then they tried with
Scadaboo. They were close to, and that would have just destroyed DeAndre Swift.
Right. So I think but that didn't happen. I think you're mostly right. I will just say, hey, his last year with Ben Johnson, 5.5 yards per carry, 70 targets. But yeah, I think you're probably right. And that's why his ADP is as low as it is. And with David Montgomery, just to make, again, I haven't started with my running back rankings, my whole process with that, but just devil's advocate argument on David Montgomery. In games they were both active, it was Montgomery who bested Gibbs in XFP. It was like 51 to 49%. And he signed that big contract extension. And then he got hurt. Maybe you can't put that genie back in the bottle, but we'll see.
I'm in on David Montgomery too. Just shout out to David Montgomery. Weeks 1 through 14, the RB11 in fantasy points per game. I think his role continues in this offense. I don't think they're going to. I think they don't want to overwork Jahmyr Gibbs, which I think is smart.
We'll find out. One thing we need to talk about is like what if the Lions just take a massive step back without Ben Johnson?
I think it's. I'm not going to say it happens, but I think. You look at all their different metrics. I don't know how big of a step back, but I mean, a lot of their metrics scream some type of regression. And who does that hit?
Yeah, and
they
also
lost Tanner Engstrom too, right?
They lost Tanner Engstrom. They also lost Frank Ragnow, who was one of the better centers in the league. And there's an article I read this past weekend about how there's still so much indecision in the building as to who starts at center. Do they move one of their guards inside the center? Does Rutledge, the rookie, have what it takes to start from day one? So the one thing that Detroit's had, they had amazing play calling with Ben Johnson. They really just ran pure in his whole time there. We don't know what Tanner Engstrom did behind the scenes, but he obviously got an offensive coordinator job, so he could have been very, very vital to this process as well. They lost other assistant coaches. Multiple assistants sort of like fled Detroit this year. And we have turnover on the offensive line. So I think that's a really interesting one. We probably should do one of these School of Scott, where we talk about like what ifs and regression offenses, breakout offenses, because I think that's a whole show on just the possibilities of Detroit. How much of the David Montgomery was Ben Johnson? How much of it was Dan Campbell? Like so much to unpack with Detroit.
I was going to say, I do think that Dan Campbell is much more involved in the offensive game planning than anybody gives him credit for. So I don't know how much they're going to take a big step back because of losing Ben Johnson and losing the other parts of pieces. But I do think there is regression to be had here.
Let's go a little bit lightning on this one. Well, not necessarily lightning, but just pick one here. Let's talk about the running backs that are going in the later portion of round 7 and early round 8. Scott, your favorite value among Isaiah Pacheco, Tony Pollard, Brian Robinson, and then we'll throw Jalen Warren in this range as well.
Yeah, it would be Tony Pollard for me. He's had 1,000 rushing yards in 3 straight seasons. Good involvement in as a pass catcher. Let's not forget, he had one of the most efficient seasons by any running back in 2022. Then he was coming off of a major surgery last year. By a lot of the efficiency metrics you want to look at, according to FantasyPoints data, very high up there. I think he's the pick, and I feel good about it.
I'll agree with Scott. I don't need to even give context. Tony Pollard's my favorite pick in this range by far. Debra, where you at?
Tony Pollard's situation improves this offseason with they added to the offensive line. Will Levis is garbage ass, not throwing passes back there. And yet Tony Pollard dropped in 80. He's the RB28. Why? Because people are so worried about Tajay Spears? Like, I don't know. He's a huge value. I'm going to draft Tony Pollard to continue to draft him. He was the RB22 last year. His situation did nothing but improve this offseason, but now we're drafting him as an RB3. He was the RB15 in expected fantasy points per game. You saw all of his efficiency metrics jump back up last year, 18th in explosive run rate, 6th in yards after contact per attempt, which has been a hallmark stat for him for most of his career as far as efficiency. It's that, like, outside of the year coming off the tightrope procedure, which I was all in, unfortunately for him. It's a big L for me. But Tony Pollard, he's a screaming value, man. Like, he is a locked-in RB2 that is being drafted grossly. I mean, it's just wrong, man, as an RB3.
Yeah, the reason is Tyjae Spears, I think. If Tyjae didn't have those high-scoring weeks to end last season...
Which is why. Like, why? Why? What did Tyjae Spears? He got tons of concussions. He was hurt. He was inefficient last year. It was what, the last week of last season that everybody's like, oh, that's the reason to worry? Like,
yeah, when Tony Pollard was out, and otherwise he was a bell cow. I think you nailed it. It's like he's cheaper now. Even like when last year he had Will Levis, one of the worst quarterbacks of all time. And it was the coaches saying, oh, this is going to be a 50-50 committee. And then we saw the entire season and it wasn't. It was Tony Pollard really more the bell cow and Tyjae Spears an afterthought. And he was not good.
So let's
outside of that 1 week 17 game.
Yep. It's Tony Pollard. Easy. I love when we all agree. And guys, let's move on. The end of the dead zone is filled with RB2s, the high-end elite handcuffs. These players are sometimes drafted inside of the end of round 9 and are always cleaned up by the end of round 10, sometimes 10, 11 turn. Najee Harris, Isaac Guerendo, Zach Charbonnet, Tyjae Spears, J.K. Dobbins, Trey Benson. Which of these players would be the one, if you could have on all of your teams, you would pick, Scott?
Yeah, for sure it'd be Isaac Guerendo, who's one of the most athletic running backs of all time, according to Spork. He looked really good last year. I thought we've seen the value in a San Francisco RB1 when Christian McCaffrey is not healthy, is not out there. You're going to get high-end RB2, low-end RB1 production. And Christian McCaffrey, you're going to be hard pressed to find someone who loves him more than I do. But since 2020, he's played 3 games, 7 games, 17 games, 16 games, 4 games. So a lot of missed time there. Guerendo for me by a landslide.
And I'll go next on this one. Mine is Zach Charbonnet, who last year had 3 top 8 weekly finishes at the running back position. I can be in on Ken Walker and in on Zach Charbonnet at the same time. I'm not going to draft both of them. I think that's completely low EV to cuff Walker with Charbonnet. To draft a guy inside of round 4 and then draft a guy inside of round 10 is not something I would do. But in the drafts where I miss on Ken Walker or I go in a different direction, I love adding Charbonnet. Walker has missed time in every single season. So when the weeks that he's out, I know I'm getting a surefire RB1 with this pick of Charbonnet. He proved it last year. And just his pedigree as a player, this was a guy who was a second-round NFL draft pick. High-end, I think, RB2, about as good as it gets in terms of handcuff value in Zach Charbonnet. Debro, where are you at on this one?
Yeah, but doesn't he go like 6? Doesn't he go like 6 rounds earlier than Guerendo? Where does he go?
Well, no, in these FFPC streets, they're pretty similar. So Guerendo, Guerendo, I would say lives inside of round 10, and Charbonnet might have a little bit more variance, but their mean ADPs are close enough to one another right now.
So my whole thing with it's your turn to talk
about a round,
but yeah,
Scott, you got an argument there. It's about a round cheaper for Grant.
So the way it works with handcuffs is like you can't predict injuries, you can only predict upside, and so it's like Zach Charbonnet, like he proved it last year, but because we can't predict injuries, I always want to gravitate towards the cheaper one, and I just know from Underdog that Charbonnet typically goes, I don't know, like 110th overall, and Guerendo goes like 150th. So I would rather wait those extra rounds, but I guess in FFPC it's very similar.
Debro, do you have a favorite player inside of this range?
It'd be Guerendo for me too. And I'm looking at the range for the range for Guerendo is much wider. Like, I mean, he's anywhere from round 9, but he'll slip to round 12. Charbonnet is it's a tighter pocket, like basically 803 to 909. So for me, it's Guerendo, and I think just framing this around the upside component of it, I'm all in on CMC. I think he's going to bounce back. I'm drafting him everywhere. I think I've got him as my RB5 in my rankings right now. But if we're going to hedge or we're looking for RB upside, I mean, it's Guerendo for me because we know the context of how he's going to be used, his talent. I mean, last year when we saw him, when he was the starter, he averaged 16.7 touches, 101 total yards. He was the RB10, RB2, RB25, and RB11. So basically, much like Charbonnet, he's a locked-in RB1. I like the context of not only – I think you're looking at similar usage for both those guys, but then it goes back to like 100-foot view which offense do I more want to buy into? Is it the 49ers or the Seahawks? And for me, it's the 49ers.
I also think there's a chance we see McCaffrey load managed. I'd say probably not, because like that's the whole value McCaffrey provides is like the do-it-all slot wide receiver if he wants to do that. Also great on the ground. But I mean, like just the guy's injury history, getting up there in age, there's a chance like, this is more of a committee and Garendo somehow manages to get standalone value on that.
Could be.
Let's finish it out, guys, with identifying our favorite player inside of the ambiguous backfields. Take as long as you want to answer this question. Let's start out with Minnesota. Minnesota right now, Aaron Jones, we left him alone for a reason. He's the RB27, and Jordan Mason is the RB33. I think this is going to be a very good offense. We are optimistic about J.J. McCarthy. We all like him, guys. We all like the offensive skill position players. Where are you at on Jones versus Mason right now in terms of ADP, D-Bro?
Oh, it's Mason for me. And I know we're not getting like just this monstrous discount, but I think it's enough. And I want the guy that I think is more likely to be the goal line back in this offense. Aaron Jones coming off a career high in touches. I think it was only the first or second time in his career he's played that many games in a season. I mean, Mason we saw, and again, I think some of this is you can put some of this on the 49ers offensive design, but also Mason just on a per touch basis, man. I mean, he checks all the boxes. The dude was top 7 in basically every tackle breaking and efficiency metric that I care about. I know the pass game upside isn't really there for him. He's not an elite pass catcher by any stretch of the imagination. But if you're drafting Mason, you're drafting for touchdowns, you're buying into the offense, and you're buying in or hedging against the health of Aaron Jones. All those things are what I want to be doing this year.
I'm on Jordan Mason as well. And Jordan Mason is going to be a target in my article for me. I had your colleague, Andrew Erickson, on Fantasy Football Daily. That show absolutely slapped. Everybody should listen to that one. We gave our big, bold predictions for the season. And Andrew's was really, really fun. It was Jordan Mason leads the NFL in rushing touchdowns. And people want to laugh that one off. But we've had well, you're not laughing that one off. But people will say that's just bombastic, whatever. That's over the top. But if we look at who's been the leader in rushing touchdowns over the last few seasons, we had the Jamal Williams season, we had the Raheem Mostert season, and we had the LeGarrette Blount season. All three of those guys were kind of in that way low end, dead zone running back. All three of those guys ran pure with the rushing scores. Minnesota gave a contract extension to Josh Oliver, the best blocking tight end in the NFL, according to ESPN. And they signed 2 offensive line starters for Indianapolis. Like, they've improved the O-line. They have the best blocking tight end in football. They went and acquired Jordan Mason, who was incredibly, like, over 25% of his runs resulted in a first down. He had a ton of runs over 20 yards. Like, he's going to get the football. I don't think they want to repeat what they did with Aaron Jones last year. And this is an offense I don't mind betting on rushing touchdowns. Scott, Jones or Mason?
Yeah, I think it's absolutely Jones. I don't think it's close. I think it's Jones in a landslide. I mean, like, who is Jordan Mason? Like, okay, he was decent for a stretch with, the GOAT Kyle Shanahan last year, but other than that, he's like a nobody. Aaron Jones, meanwhile, we have 9 straight seasons of him averaging 4.5 yards per carry or more. He would have been a league winner last year. He would have been like a low-end RB1 at worst if it wasn't for really bad, fluky bad touchdown luck. Maybe that's part of D-Bro's argument. He's just not great there. But like, if you look at historical red zone to touchdown conversion rates, Aaron Jones is at the top of the list. I thought it was just stupid, Green Bay, giving those to A.J. Dillon, who wasn't good at it. But I don't know. Aaron Jones, I just think he's super talented. I think he's a great pass catcher. I think he's a hyper efficient runner. It's just a matter of, can he stay healthy or not? And Jordan Mason is just insurance to that end.
Scott, any worry about Jones? Because a lot of we were both heavy on Aaron Jones last year. Mm-hmm. Any worry for you? Because his per touch efficiency, like his missed tackles force per attempt and his explosive run rates both dropped off the map last year. Any worries for you with that?
Yeah, I think it was just a function of maybe dealing with some of those injuries. Okay. And also like Minnesota's offensive line was really bad in And you saw it more in the running game than the passing game, but they lost Darisaw halfway through the season. Another one of their starters, I think, missed the first half of the year. But I don't know. It could be, like you said, he's getting up there with age and has a long injury history.
Our colleague Graham Barfield was also all in on Aaron Jones. Had basically the same response you did, Scott, when we discussed these two head to head about a month back when we discussed every single backfield on Fantasy Football Daily. Let's keep the ambiguous backfield conversation going. The Jacksonville Jaguars, and when we go to Fantasy Points data, there was 2 Buccaneers backs who were top 5 in design targets. Really, really a positive sign for fantasy football production. So we know that there's going to be fantasy points scored by Jacksonville Jaguars running backs this year, Scott. But which one is the best bet for you at ADP? Early on, it was Bashal Tutin. We've seen sort of a comeback from Travis Etienne in the ADP streets. Those two are getting basically drafted back to back now. Arguments for both out there. And then Tank Bigsby. So, of course, Bashal Tutin's running back 35, Etienne running back 36. So it's literally a head-to-head decision. And Tank Bigsby is creeping at RB 49. What's the best click to make among all 3 Jacksonville running backs?
Yeah, I think it's Tutin, easy. Going back to our podcast from like February, our live draft with a Beeb is, I think Travis Etienne is just dead and toast. And Bigsby I was never that high on. He was good by yards after contact per attempt last year, but I don't know. I think Bashal Tutin's special. That's also the guy they went out and got this new regime. And so, yeah, I don't think it's close.
I think this is one where it's going to be annoying over the first half of the year, but as we creep towards the fantasy playoffs, it's going to absolutely be Bashal Tutin's the one you want, and I think his role will grow as the season moves along. So if I'm chasing like the first month of the season, I'll give it to Etienne. The rest of the season, Bashal Tutin. Where are you at on this one, D-Bro?
I'm not drafting freaking Travis Etienne. I think he's cooked, man. He had an 8% missed tackle rate last year, 2.3 yards after contact per attempt. Hell no. I don't even know if he's on this roster. I'll actually go as far as to say I don't think he's on this roster. I don't care what Liam Cohen says. They got to say what they got to say. Like an injury happens to another team or backfield or somebody comes calling and Jacksonville can get a draft pick for Travis Etienne, he's gone. I don't think he's on this team with week 1. I think you're looking at, unless Bashal Tutin just falls in his face in camp and stuff like that, I think you're looking at a backfield that's Tutin and Tank. And for Tank, I love I'm drafting both of these guys, honestly, at cost, because Tank, I think he can be a David Montgomery, a dollar store David Montgomery in this offense, but I don't think he has any pass game upside. And we saw that last year, 12 targets, the entirety of last year. You look at that and his collegiate profile, he's not going to catch passes. So it's all early down and touchdown related stuff. So then you're just buying into how good can Jacksonville's offense be. I think they can be improved. I don't think they're going to be top 10 or 12 in scoring. So that's not the role that I want to garner. It's all roads lead back to Bashal Tutin. I think he can be the passing down back. He can factor in on early downs. He's top 12 in basically every per touch metric that I care about last year. I think the ADP is right. He should be the top Jaguars back drafted.
Dollar store David Montgomery is an absolute bar, D-Bro. That's a good one. That's a really good one. I like that. Let's stick with you on this one to start us out. Dallas Cowboys, right behind Jacksonville and ADP. But right behind Tutin and Etienne, you'll find Javonte Williams and Jaden Blue. Javonte going off the board as running back 39. Jaden Blue is running back 43. And Miles Sanders is pretty much free. Who's the Cowboys running back, if you want exposure to any of them, that you would click on?
I'm going to not make people try to vomit with this, but I think it's Javonte Williams, man. And this is not that I hate Jaden Blue or anything. I think I'll get to him in a second. I think when you look at Javonte's 2024 season and you really put this under the microscope, it's interesting. First pass to Javonte, you look at the overall metrics for the entire season, they're all bad. But if you pop open the hood and you go, again, going back to fantasy points data, you can split and look week by week. Javonte Williams hit a wall last year. If you look at, and again, people will have pause with that. They'll say, But okay, we hit a wall last year. Why are you buying into it? Another year away from the catastrophic injury, I wonder if we get a better version of Javonte Williams that looks closer to what we saw in the first 8 weeks of the season. Because if you look at Javonte Williams and you split it out by weeks 1 through 8, amongst 43 qualifying running backs, this dude was 13th best in missed tackles forced per attempt. He had a 20% missed tackle rate. After week 8, Javonte Williams did not force a single missed tackle. None. Zero. Zilch. Nada. None. So if we get the week 1 through 8 version of before he hit a wall, and I know there's a lot of projection in what I'm talking about here, but if we get that a closer to that type of version of Javonte Williams for an entirety of a season, I mean, he can pass protect. He's sufficient in the passing game. I think that people are talking about Jaden Blue and they're like, oh, he's the passing down back. Okay, you can look at his collegiate numbers and say, okay, fine. Like, there is reason to believe that in yards per route run, if you watch the film and the guy is an angle route demon. But is Dallas going to trust him on passing downs? Because Texas never even did, man. This guy had 44 pass blocking snaps in all of college. So it's not like he was a trusted weapon and a trusted passing down back even in college. So is that going to happen as a rookie in the NFL? That's where I have pause. So for me, it's honestly, I'm buying into Javonte Williams. I think there's upside for him to be this year's J.K. Dobbins.
If I'm looking for early season running back production, I don't hate taking Javonte Williams. If I'm looking for a lottery ticket out of this backfield, it's Jaden Blue. I think if there's some attrition between the older, dusty Javonte, who's missed a ton of time, Miles Sanders, who's missed time, if one of those guys just clears a pathway and Jaden Blue could really be like a high-value touch guy who could catch a lot of passes, he's exciting, he's fast. I really don't want to take any of these guys, but I guess Jaden Blue would be my answer. Scott, who are you on, if anyone?
Yeah, I think all these guys stink, but Javonte stinks the least. So definitely think, Miles Sanders is toast. Wasn't a Jaden Blue guy, etc. Deuce Vaughn, who's like 5'4". No,
Kavonte Turpin, they've mentioned might take some running back snaps.
Oh, good Lord.
Oh, wow.
But Kavonte Turpin at running back would sort of ruin a lot of the Jaden Blue narrative because like Turpin's fun, guys. Turpin at running back would be fun. It would be a highlight reel waiting to happen at least once every few games.
Well, yeah.
I will say, searching the name of Phil Maffa here too. Just got to throw that out.
God.
Oh man.
No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding.
Phil Maffa is the name you throw out when you want to end podcasts. So let's end the podcast with a backfield close to Scott's heart, the New York Giants, and we're seeing sort of a little bit of a comeback from Tyrone Tracy backers. Cam Scatterbu at RB32 in ADP, Tyrone Tracy at RB38. Scatterbu's missed a little bit of time in some of these OTAs. There's still some enthusiasm for him, but you're seeing more and more Tracy people out there than maybe we saw post NFL draft. Pick your fighter here, Scott. Still on your guy Cam Scatterbu, or make an argument for Tyrone Tracy?
No, of course it's Cam Scatterbu, my guy. All the dank stats, handpicked by the new regime. They're super high on him. I just see a ton of upside. Hopefully Tyrone Tracy was one of my guys. It's probably going to be a committee, but I would really love it if they just go full on bell cow, Cam Scatterbu. This isn't going to be a good team. They're going to be trailing most of their games. Lean into that pass catching upside, which is really, I think, one of the ways Scatterbu distinguishes himself from Tyrone Tracy, ironically, because he's a former wide receiver. But yeah, like I'm hoping this is just a bad team, but it's the Cam Scatterbu show. And you see him get like 5+ targets per game. And it's like vintage, 2019 Leonard Fournette. That's my hopes and dreams. And Scatterbu's my guy.
Yeah, and I get back to the fumbles for Tracy. I think that Scatterbu is just much more sure-handed. Tracy fumbled the ball a number of times last year, and if I'm looking to sort of run an offense that's sort of going to protect my job with Brian Daboll, I'm probably going to lean towards the guy who's not going to put the ball on the ground, and Scatterbu. Scatterbu also just a much better prospect as a running back than Tracy was. Like, we all love Tracy. A lot of the athletic traits, the converted wide receiver, there was a lot there. but Cam Scatterbo was one of the most productive running backs we've ever seen out of the Big 12, Pac-12, whatever conference you're talking about for him. But that part of the country, like a West Coast running back, Scatterbo was one of the more productive ones we've seen over the last few years. I'm going Scatterbo here, and I've actually been enjoying the discount. I think he could turn into a big ADP win here if the convergence of the two continues in ADP. Debra, where are you at?
It's all Scatterbo. It's all Scatterbo all the time, man. Cam Scatterbo got more draft capital than freaking Tyrone Tracy. Tyrone Tracy literally fumbled away his opportunity last year. He had the 23rd most touches amongst all running backs last year, but he was tied for the 3rd most fumbles. And then you have a team that goes out and they put more draft capital behind the running back they draft this year, who just look at the archetype of running back this guy is. He's a volume compiler. He's going to be out there. He's also a really good in the passing game. And the thing that I think we're and myself included, when I entered into the offseason looking at this, and I'm like, could this be a committee? What out of anything that the Giants showed us last year would lead us to believe that they want any part of a committee? This was Devin Singletary's backfield until it wasn't. Then it was Tyrone Tracy's backfield until it wasn't. And then, it was again. I mean, I'm filtering right now in the bell cow report. I mean, just going down the weeks, guys. Devin Singletary, 72% rush share, 82%, 69%, 69%. Tracy takes over, 59%, 83%, 67, 59. The Giants want one running back to step up. That's going to be Cam Scatterbo. And if he takes that job and the Giants run this back and there's one guy getting 60, 70, 80% of the opportunity share, Cam Scatterbo is an RB3 that could be, like, honestly a top 15 running back when we're getting the weekly rankings, and we're ranking him as a top 20 running back every single damn week.
It's always
Cam Scatterbo. I just wanted to add one that was hot. That was hot fire. I wanted to add one thing. Tyrone Tracy, 5 fumbles last year, but on top of that, he had 6 drops, and one of those drops was deflected into an interception that cost them the game. Really wouldn't be surprised if, still in the doghouse after that. That stings to a coach.
Guys, this was absolute fire today. We went super long on this one, but I think this was really, really a fun episode. Debra, let everybody know where they can find your work on a weekly basis.
Man, everything's at Fantasy Pros. Running back, I'll have the primer out every single week during the regular season. All my redraft stuff is hitting the redraft kit, which is live on FantasyPros.com. Again, my perfect draft article walking you through every single round of the draft. Scott, what do you have going on?
What do I have going on, Theo? I don't know.
We're going to be off of I'll preface like a little School of Scott. We're off for a week, and then we're coming back with a ton of episodes in July. July's going to be a really, really big month for us. Scott,
I have my little sister's wedding, so shout out to my little sister. I'll be gone for a week. Then we're going to come back, hit the ground running. I know everyone's begging for my Exodia plays. My draft guide should be first week of August, maybe sooner if we're lucky. But ready getting started on that.
Yeah, a lot of very cool articles coming out at Fantasy Points this month as well. Make sure you check those out. Ryan Heath is going to join me on Dynasty Life this week. And Andrew Cooper of Fantasy Alarm will be with me on Fantasy Football Daily. And we're just going to continue dropping unbelievable podcast over here on the Fantasy Points Podcast Network every single week. School of Scott's going to bring you the heat all season long, and we're going to help you crush your fantasy leagues this season.